I creep in slowly. I'm undetected at first. I caress your mind and slowly paralyze your body. I make it hard to feel happiness. I make you want to forget the sun. I corrupt your mind with unpleasant thoughts which last for hours and make your days feel so much longer. It's unbearable at first. You try to shake it, but eventually you give in and accept my cold embrace. You move out of your body and I take residence. At some point, I'll share this dance with all of you. Many numbers will last longer than others, and for some, it'll be their final. Please know I don't discriminate, and I'd love to know you all. Pardon my manners. Maybe I should introduce myself. The name's Depression. Shall we get started? I've fallen victim to the hands of depression more times than I'd like to admit. It's always the same gentle dance initially. Usually, I don't even feel when our performance has begun. However, after a few counts in, it starts to develop into a fast-paced routine. A whirlwind of emotions I have absolutely no control over. I'm no longer the pilot in my body, but just a mere passenger. There will always be variables in all of our lives that we won't be able to control. These variables may lead us to succumb to depression. Whether it's a great loss, breakup, or stress-induced incident, at some point or the other, we all feel sad. It doesn't matter how you fall into the hands of depression, but it matters how you escape its grasp and find your way back to your light of enjoyment. To help you better understand depression, I will go over with you the false stigmas, symptoms, treatments, including ways to cope with your depression. In order to put things into proper perspective, we first must debunk a few myths about depression. Many people have trouble understanding depression. As a result, those with depression often have to battle social stigmas. It's still seemingly unacceptable to mention the black cloud we encounter from time to time. For some cultures, it's a sign of weakness and shame, and for others, it's viewed as a pessimistic attitude, and no one wants to be around a Debbie Downer, right? For those reasons alone, most persons are ashamed to talk about and seek help for their depression. These ideals are all wrong. There is actually a great strength in opening up about depression. It takes a great amount of courage to be that vulnerable. In order to fight depression, stigmas, there are a series of steps you can use, including facing your own stereotypes to better understand oneself and help persons to better understand you. In her web article, Countering the Social Stigma of Depression, Elizabeth Bowers suggests a few steps that we can use when we're ready to share our trauma. First, pick your moment. Then, choose your words carefully. Also, stop blaming yourself while you take some ownership of your condition. Lastly, conduct yourself with poise and don't isolate yourself. Now that we've worked past our stereotypes, we need to understand depression and be able to pick up the warning symptoms and signs. Symptoms of depression are typically easy to read once you've acknowledged depression as the underlying problem. But initially, these symptoms can blend in and seem like the result of going through a typical day. How do you know if you're suffering from depression? What are some things that should stand up and be alarming enough to give you a hint? One of the biggest giveaways when dealing with depression is prolonged feelings of sadness. As seen as this next slide, usually one isolates themselves. We suddenly have little to no interest in things. It's coupled by constant feelings of fatigue with excessive sleeping or lack thereof. There are also changes in mood and appetite, which can result in severe changes in weight. Most persons also feel worthless and have trouble concentrating or being aware. When experiencing symptoms you may think are related to depression, you should consult your doctor and get a proper diagnosis and seek options to combat your depression. These prolonged periods may result in thoughts of suicide, and if you feel at any point you are a danger to yourself or someone else, your next step should be to seek proper assistance. Once people have a diagnosis of depression, they can look at treatment options. Let's look at some of the most common ones. Treatments for depression are vast. They are based off the individual's preference and are catered to their individual needs. One of the most common treatments of depression is medication. Your doctor will choose your medication based off of factors such as your prior experience with medication, co-occurring medical and psychological disorders like you may have anxiety, or any other medications you're taking, personal preference, the medication's short and long-term side effects, and toxicity of overdose if you're at risk for suicide. When I was first clinically diagnosed with my depression back in August, I was weary of taking medication. In my country, it is seen as a taboo, and it doesn't help that I didn't get the reaction or support that I wanted from my parents. However, I wanted to get better, so I gave it a try. Turns out, I'm still not a fan of the drugs. If medicine isn't something you're comfortable with, try psychotherapy or other social outlets that force you to be engaged. I decided to use my side hobby as an outlet. I dog sit for my friends and coworkers, always free of charge because it gives me a sense of responsibility and obligation to something other than myself. It pushes me to get out of bed in the morning, and I interact with those around me. It gives me a sense of accomplishment, and not to mention an overflow of love. In conclusion, don't allow the false pretensions about depression to stop you from opening up. Acknowledge your symptoms and seek help utilizing a treatment regimen that works for you. Depression is a psychological state that is hard to cure, hard to live with, and hard to endure. But remember, you are not alone. Keep loving yourself because depression is a battle that can be won, and we will beat this.